The transport ship landed on the main platform of the Galactic Academy with a soft hum. Students from all over the known universe gathered to watch the new arrivals. They came from hundreds of different planets and spoke thousands of different languages. But today everyone was talking about the same thing. A dragon was coming to study at the academy. Hyun stood among the crowd of human students. She was 20 years old and had been studying at the academy for 2 years. She pushed her black hair behind her ear and tried to see over the taller alien students in front of her. The Valkyrians were especially tall, with their thick gray skin and powerful arms. Next to them stood the Thraxians, who looked like giant insects with tentacles instead of arms. The Morphians floated in the air, their bodies made of something that looked like colored smoke. All of them were talking and pointing at the ship. Dragons were famous across the galaxy. They were known as the greatest warriors anyone had ever seen. Their strength was legendary. A single dragon could destroy an entire army. Their fire could melt metal in seconds. Their claws could cut through the strongest armor. When dragons went to war, planets surrendered without fighting. The ship's door opened slowly. Everyone became quiet. They wanted to see this fearsome warrior, but what came out was not what anyone expected. A small dragon walked down the ramp. He was barely 2 meters tall, which was short for a dragon. His scales were bronze-colored and shined in the sunlight. He had bright green eyes that looked curious and excited. In his claws he carried several data tablets and what looked like books. Actual paper books, which almost nobody used anymore. The crowd began to whisper. Some aliens laughed. This tiny dragon did not look scary at all. He looked like a student who loved reading. "That's the dragon?" said a loud voice. It belonged to Thrak, a Valkyrian who was the combat champion of the academy. He was over 3 meters tall and covered in muscle. "I thought dragons were supposed to be dangerous." His friends laughed with him. Other alien students joined in. They had expected a fierce warrior. Instead, they saw a small dragon who carried books. Hyun felt uncomfortable. She did not like when people made fun of others. She knew how it felt to be laughed at. Humans were still new to the galactic community. Many aliens thought humans were weak and stupid. They said Earth was a backwards planet that had nothing important to offer. The small dragon did not seem to notice the laughter. He looked around the academy with wonder in his eyes. The academy was beautiful. It was built on a space station that floated between 3 suns. The buildings were made of crystal and metal that changed colors. Gardens grew in artificial gravity, with plants from 1,000 different worlds. Ships came and went constantly, bringing students and teachers from across the galaxy. A tall woman in a uniform walked toward the dragon. She was the orientation officer who welcomed new students. "Welcome to the Galactic Academy," she said in the common language that everyone could understand. "You must be Jiho from the Dragon homeworld." "Yes," the dragon said. His voice was soft and melodic, not deep and frightening like people expected. "I am very happy to be here. I have wanted to study at this academy since I was very young. Your library is famous even on my world." The orientation officer looked surprised. "The library? Most students are interested in our combat training facilities or our strategic warfare programs." "Oh, I know about those too," Jiho said quickly. "But I came here to learn. To study mathematics and physics and history and everything I can. My people are known for fighting, but I want to be known for thinking." More laughter came from the crowd. A dragon who wanted to study instead of fight. It seemed ridiculous to many of the aliens. The orientation officer cleared her throat. "Well, we have assigned you a guide. She will help you learn about the academy and show you where everything is." She looked into the crowd. "Yun, please come forward." Yun felt her heart jump. She had volunteered to be a guide for new students, but she did not know she would be guiding a dragon. She walked through the crowd, trying to ignore the stares. When she reached Jiho, she bowed slightly. It was a gesture of respect from Earth. "Hello," she said. "I am Hyun. I will help you get comfortable here." Jiho's eyes brightened even more. "You are from Earth. I have read about your planet. Your species discovered faster than light travel only 50 years ago. But you have already made many contributions to galactic science. Your professor, Dr. Yuna, published a paper on quantum mechanics that changed how we understand reality. I have read it 7 times. Hyun was surprised. Most aliens did not know anything good about Earth or humans. They only knew that Earth was new and small compared to other civilizations. "Thank you," she said. "Not many people know about Dr. Yuna's work." "Then they are foolish," Jiho said simply. Good knowledge is good knowledge, no matter where it comes from. Hyun found herself smiling. She liked this small dragon already. The orientation officer handed Hyun a datapad. This has Jiho's schedule and room assignment. Please make sure he knows where all his classes are. She turned to Jiho. The semester officially starts tomorrow. Tonight there will be a welcome gathering for all new students in the main hall. I hope you will attend. I will, Jiho promised. Then he looked at all the tablets and books he was carrying. But first, could you show me where the library is? I would like to see it before it gets dark, Hyun laughed. It does not get dark here. We are in space between 3 suns. There is always light. Even better, Jiho said. Then I can read all night. As they walked away from the landing platform, Hyun could hear the other students still talking and laughing. Throck's voice was the loudest. A dragon who reads books. I have seen everything now. What a waste of a warrior. Jiho must have heard it too, but he did not react. He just walked beside Hyun, looking at everything with curious eyes. Does it bother you? Hyun asked quietly. When they laugh at you? Why would it bother me? Jiho asked. They laugh because they do not understand. That is their problem, not mine. But dragons are supposed to be warriors, Hyun said. That is what everyone thinks. Everyone also thinks humans are weak and stupid, Jiho replied. But I have read your history. Your species survived an ice age with nothing but primitive tools. You explored your entire planet before you even had machines. You created art and music and mathematics when you were still living in caves. You are not weak. You are survivors. You are thinkers. The other aliens do not see that because they do not want to learn. Hyun felt a warm feeling in her chest. Nobody had ever said such things about humans before. At least no alien had said them. They reached the library and Jiho stopped walking. His mouth opened in awe. The library was enormous. It was a crystal dome that stretched up for hundreds of meters. Inside, there were levels upon levels of books, data terminals, and study areas. Students from dozens of species were reading and working. The walls glowed with soft light and the air smelled like paper and electricity. It is beautiful, Jiho whispered. It is the biggest library in this part of the galaxy, Hyun said. It has knowledge from 10,000 different civilizations. Then I will need many years to read it all, Jiho said seriously. I should start tonight, Hyun laughed again. She was starting to think that this semester would be very interesting. What neither of them knew was that in a few months, this small dragon who loved to study would change everything. He would solve a problem that had been impossible for 3,000 years. He would make the entire galaxy stop and pay attention, and he would prove that sometimes the greatest weapon was not strength or fire or claws. Sometimes the greatest weapon was a curious mind and the courage to use it. The first day of classes began with a special assembly in the grand auditorium. Thousands of students filled the massive room. The walls were made of transparent material that showed the stars outside. 3 suns shined in the distance, painting everything in colors of gold, blue, and red. Professor Kelthar floated to the center stage. He was a Thraxian, one of the most respected teachers at the academy. His species had been exploring space for over 10,000 years. His tentacles moved slowly as he spoke in the common language. Welcome to a new semester, his voice echoed through the auditorium. This academy has trained the greatest minds in the galaxy for 5,000 years. Many of you will become scientists. Some will become engineers. Others will become leaders of your worlds. Jiho sat between Hyun and another human student named Minho. Jiho had his data tablet ready to take notes. His green eyes focused completely on the professor. But today, Professor Kelthar continued, I want to announce something special. A challenge for all students regardless of your year or your field of study. The auditorium became very quiet. Everyone wanted to hear about this challenge. 3,000 years ago, a mathematician named Zelthor discovered a problem. We call it the Nexus paradox. It is a mathematical equation that seems simple but is actually impossible to solve. The greatest minds from hundreds of civilizations have tried. All of them have failed. Images appeared in the air above the professor. They showed complex equations and diagrams that hurt to look at. Even the smartest students looked confused. This semester we are offering a prize, Professor Kelthar said. Anyone who can solve the Nexus paradox or even make significant progress toward solving it will receive a full research grant. You will also be guaranteed a position on the Intergalactic Science Council. Students began talking excitedly. The Science Council was the most prestigious organization in the galaxy. Only the very best scientists could join. And a research grant meant unlimited resources to study whatever you wanted. Of course, Professor Kelthar's voice became slightly mocking. I do not expect any of you to succeed. This is simply an exercise to teach you about the limits of knowledge. Sometimes we must accept that some things cannot be known. Hyun noticed that Jiho had become very still. His eyes were fixed on the equations floating in the air. She could almost see his mind working. After the assembly ended, students poured out of the auditorium. Most of them were talking about how impossible the challenge was. Some laughed about it. Others were already planning to ignore it completely. Did you see those equations? Minho said as they walked through the crystal corridors. I understood maybe 3 symbols out of 100. That problem is truly impossible. But Jiho was not listening. He was still staring at his data tablet, where he had copied the equations from the assembly. Jiho, Hyun touched his arm gently. Are you okay? The small dragon looked up. There was an intense light in his eyes. It is not impossible, he said quietly. What? Minho laughed. Of course it is impossible. Did you not hear the professor? 3,000 years and nobody has solved it. Just because nobody has solved it does not mean it cannot be solved, Jiho said. Maybe everyone has been thinking about it wrong. You cannot be serious, Minho said. You just arrived yesterday. You are going to try to solve something that has defeated the greatest minds in the galaxy? Yes, Jiho said simply. I am going to try. Hyun did not know what to say. Part of her thought it was crazy. But another part of her remembered what Jiho had said about humans, that they were survivors and thinkers. Maybe dragons could be thinkers too, not just warriors. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Jiho attended all his classes, but Hyun could tell his mind was somewhere else. He took notes automatically, but his eyes kept drifting back to his tablet, to those impossible equations. That evening, Hyun found Jiho in the library. He had claimed a study desk in a quiet corner. Around him were piles of books and data tablets. His claws moved quickly across a holographic screen, pulling up research papers from dozens of different civilizations. Have you eaten? Hyun asked. What? Jiho looked up, confused. Oh no, I have not had time. Jiho, you need to eat. And sleep. I will sleep later, the dragon said. Right now I need to understand how others have approached this problem. If I can see where they went wrong, maybe I can find a new path. Hyun sighed. She recognized this behavior. She had done the same thing when she was working on her entrance project for the academy. She had become so focused that she forgot to take care of herself. At least let me bring you some food, she said. Jiho smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Thank you, Hyun. You are a good friend. As Hyun walked to the cafeteria, she thought about that word, friend. She had not had many friends at the academy. Most of the alien students ignored the humans. They thought Earth was too primitive to be worth their time. And the other human students were often too intimidated by the aliens to make friends with them. But Jiho was different. He did not care what species someone was. He only cared about knowledge and kindness. The cafeteria was crowded with students eating dinner. Hyun got food for herself and for Jiho. She was not sure what dragons ate, so she got a variety of things. As she was leaving, she heard a familiar voice. Look, it is the human who guides the tiny dragon. Thrak stood with a group of his Velkarian friends. They were all big and muscular, with gray skin and cruel smiles. How is your pet doing? Thrak continued. Still reading his little books? Hyun tried to walk past them, but Thrak stepped in her way. I heard he is going to try to solve the Nexus paradox, Thrak said. That is very funny. A baby dragon who thinks he is smart. He is smart, Hyun said, trying to keep her voice steady. Smarter than you, clearly. Thrak's smile disappeared. What did you say? You heard me, Hyun said. Her heart was beating fast, but she refused to back down. You judge people by their size and strength, but intelligence is more important than muscles. One of Thrak's friends laughed. She thinks humans are intelligent. That is the funniest thing I have heard all day. Humans barely discovered space travel, another one added. Your entire civilization is younger than my grandfather. And yet we are here, Hyun said. Learning the same things you learn. Taking the same classes. Maybe that says something about us. Thrak leaned down until his face was close to hers. His breath smelled like sulfur. Be careful, little human. You and your dragon friend do not belong here. This academy is for species that matter. Then why are you here? A new voice said. Everyone turned. A young woman stood behind them, holding a stack of data tablets. She wore the uniform of a library assistant. Her name tag said Minji, in both human letters and galactic symbols. Excuse me? Throk said. I asked why you are here, Minji repeated. She was small even for a human, but her voice was confident. If this academy is only for species that matter, and you spend all your time bullying others instead of studying, then clearly you do not matter very much. Throk's face turned dark red. I dare to speak truth, Minji said. Now move. You are blocking the exit and I have work to do. For a moment, Hyun thought Throk would do something violent, but there were teachers nearby, and even Throk was not stupid enough to start a fight in the cafeteria. He stepped aside with a growl. This is not over, he said to Hyun. It never is with people like you, Minji replied cheerfully. The Valkyrians walked away, muttering angry words in their own language. Thank you, Hyun said to Minji. That was brave. Minji shrugged. I work in the library. I see Throk and his friends all the time. They come in to look tough, but they never actually read anything. They are all muscles and no brain. She noticed the food Hyun was carrying. Is that for the dragon Jiho? Yes, how did you know his name? He came to the library after the assembly, Minji said. He asked me about research papers on ancient mathematics. He was very polite. Most students just demand things, but he said please and thank you. She smiled. I like him. Is he really going to try to solve the Nexus paradox? He says he is. Good, Minji said. Someone should. Just because something has been impossible for 3,000 years does not mean it will be impossible forever. She adjusted her stack of tablets. I need to get back to work. But tell Jiho that if he needs any help finding research materials, he can ask me. I know where all the old archives are stored. I will tell him, Hyun promised. When Hyun returned to the library, she found Jiho exactly where she had left him. But now there was another human sitting with him. It was Taeyang, a student who was famous for his engineering skills. He had designed a new type of engine in his first year that was now being used on cargo ships across the galaxy. Hyun, Jiho said excitedly. Look, Taeyang understands propulsion mathematics. He thinks there might be a connection between the Nexus paradox and faster-than-light travel. It is just a theory, Taeyang said modestly, but the equations have some similar structures. If we could solve the paradox, we might be able to improve our engines by a factor of 10. Hyun set down the food. I met someone who can help. A library assistant named Minji. She knows where all the old research is stored. Perfect. Jiho took a bite of food without looking at it. We will need to review every attempt that has been made. We need to learn from every failure. We? Hyun asked. Jiho looked at her with surprise. Of course. I cannot do this alone. I need help. Will you help me? Hyun thought about Thro. 3 months passed in a blur of equations, research papers, and sleepless nights. The team had grown into a tight group. Jiho, Hyun, Minji, and Taeyang met every evening in their corner of the library. They worked until the early morning hours, then attended classes during the day, then returned to work again. Minji had become their research specialist. She could find any paper, any book, any piece of information they needed. She knew the library better than anyone, including most of the teachers. She would disappear into the old archives and return with texts that had not been read in centuries. Taeyang handled all the mathematical calculations. His mind worked like a computer, able to see patterns and connections that others missed. He had created special programs to test different approaches to the paradox. Hyun became the coordinator. She made sure everyone ate and slept. She organized their findings and kept track of what they had tried and what they still needed to test. She also protected them from distractions, including the constant mockery from other students. But Jiho was the heart of everything. His curiosity and determination never faded. Even when they hit dead ends, even when their theories failed, he would simply say, "Then we try something else." His dragon mind worked differently than human minds. He could hold dozens of complex ideas at once and see how they connected. The other students still laughed at them. Throk and his friends made fun of them constantly. They called them the Failure Club and said they were wasting their time on an impossible problem. But slowly, something started to happen. The team began to make progress. It started small. Taeyang found a pattern in the equations that nobody had noticed before. It was hidden in the way the numbers interacted with each other. When he showed it to Jiho, the dragon's eyes went wide. "That is it," Jiho whispered. "That is the key. Everyone has been trying to solve the paradox directly. But what if we do not solve it? What if we go around it? I do not understand, Hyun said. Jiho's claws moved quickly, drawing diagrams in the air with holographic light. Imagine you are in a room with no doors. Everyone has been trying to break down the walls. But what if there is a window we have not noticed? What if we can climb through the window instead? You want to find a different approach entirely, Minji said. Yes. We stop trying to solve the paradox using traditional mathematics. Instead, we use something new, something that combines different types of thinking. Over the next few weeks, they worked even harder. Jiho brought in concepts from dragon mathematics, which was based on heat flow and energy patterns. Humans thought in straight lines and logic. Dragons thought in curves and intuition. When they combined these two ways of thinking, something amazing happened. The equations started to make sense, but the work was taking a toll on all of them, especially Jiho. Dragons had powerful bodies, but even they had limits. Jiho was sleeping only 2 or 3 hours each night. He barely ate. His bronze scales began to look dull. One evening, Hyun found him collapsed over his desk in the library. His breathing was shallow and his body was too hot to touch. Jiho! She shook him gently, but he did not wake up. Minji! Taeyang, help! They carried the small dragon to the medical bay. It was not easy. Even though Jiho was small for a dragon, he was still heavy. By the time they got him to the medical bay, all 3 humans were exhausted. Dr. Daehyun was the only human doctor at the academy. He was a kind man with gray hair and gentle hands. He examined Jiho carefully. His neural pathways are burning too hot, the doctor said. He has been thinking too much, too intensely, for too long. Dragon brains can handle more than human brains, but they still have limits. Will he be okay? Hyun asked. She was surprised by how worried she felt. Jiho had become more than just a study partner. He was her friend. Her best friend, really. He will recover, Dr. Daehyun said. But he needs rest, real rest. No studying, no thinking about equations. At least 3 days. He will not like that, Taeyang said. I do not care if he likes it, the doctor replied firmly. If he continues like this, he will damage his brain permanently. Intelligence is worthless if you destroy the organ that creates it. They stayed with Jiho until he woke up. When his green eyes finally opened, the first thing he said was, "Did I miss anything important?" Only common sense, Hyun said, trying to sound angry but feeling only relief. You collapsed, Jiho. You pushed yourself too hard. But we are so close, Jiho protested weakly. I can feel it. The solution is right there, just out of reach. It will still be there in 3 days, Minji said. The paradox has waited 3,000 years. It can wait 3 more days. Jiho tried to argue, but Dr. Daehyun gave him medicine that made him sleepy. Soon the small dragon was snoring softly, his claws twitching as if he was dreaming about equations. The 3 humans left the medical bay feeling worried. Without Jiho, could they continue the work? They decided to try. That night, Taeyang presented their preliminary findings to Professor Kelthar. The professor had office hours where students could discuss their projects. Taeyang had been nervous about going, but Hyun convinced him it was important. They needed feedback from someone who understood the paradox. Professor Kelthar's office was filled with strange objects from different worlds. Crystals that glowed with inner light, metals that changed shape, books written in languages that hurt human eyes to read. The Thraxian professor looked at Taeyang with his multifaceted eyes. His tentacles moved in patterns that meant he was curious but skeptical. You are working on the Nexus paradox, Professor Kelthar said. It was not a question. Yes, sir. With my team, we think we have found a new approach. Let me see. Taeyang showed him their work on a data tablet. The professor's tentacles moved faster as he read, which meant he was either very interested or very angry. With Thraxians, it was hard to tell the difference. Finally, Professor Kelthar set down the tablet. This is absurd, he said. Taeyang's heart sank. Sir, you are combining dragon mathematics with human chaos theory, with Valkyrian probability models. These disciplines have nothing to do with each other. They were developed by completely different species with completely different ways of thinking. Mixing them together is like mixing water and fire and expecting to get something useful. But that is exactly the point, Taeyang said, finding courage he did not know he had. Maybe that is why nobody has solved the paradox. Everyone stays within their own way of thinking. We are trying something different. Different does not mean better, Professor Kelthar said coldly. It usually just means wrong. You are wasting your time and the dragon's time. I suggest you focus on your actual coursework instead of chasing impossible dreams. Taeyang left the office feeling defeated. When he returned to the library and told the others what happened, they all felt discouraged. Maybe he is right, Taeyang said quietly. Maybe we are just fooling ourselves. No, Minji said firmly. Remember what Jiho said? Just because something has been impossible does not mean it will always be impossible. The professor is wrong. But he has studied this for decades, Taeyang argued. He knows more than we do. He knows more facts, Hyun said slowly. But maybe he has stopped learning. Maybe that is the problem with all the people who tried to solve this before. They knew so much that they could not imagine something new. That night, while Jiho slept in the medical bay, the three humans continued working. They pushed forward with the approach they had started. And slowly, piece by piece, the solution began to emerge. 2 days later, Jiho was released from the medical bay. Dr. Daehyun made him promise to sleep at least 6 hours every night and eat 3 full meals every day. Jiho agreed, though everyone could tell he would break that promise the moment he saw their progress. When Jiho returned to the library and saw what they had accomplished without him, his eyes filled with tears. You did not give up, he said softly. Of course not, Hyun said. We are a team. Teams do not give up. But as Jiho looked at their work, his expression changed from joy to shock to something like fear. What is wrong? Minji asked. Nothing is wrong, Jiho whispered. Everything is right. You found it? You actually found it. Found what? The window, Jiho said. The way around the paradox. It is here, in this equation. If we can just expand this part here, and connect it to this section here. His claws moved quickly, adding to their work, building on what they had discovered. The three humans watched as Jiho worked. His movements became faster and faster. His mind was fully engaged now, making connections at incredible speed. Hours passed. Other students came and went in the library. Some noticed the small group working in their corner. A few even stopped to watch. Word began to spread through the academy that something interesting was happening. Finally, as the three suns rose outside the library windows, Jiho stopped working. He stared at the holographic equations floating in front of him. Is it done? Taeyang asked nervously. Not yet, Jiho said, but almost. We need to verify everything. We need to make sure there are no mistakes. But I think we actually did it. Hyun felt her heart racing. Could it be true? Had they really solved the impossible problem? We should double-check everything, Minji said. We cannot present this until we are absolutely certain. They spent the grand auditorium was completely full. Every seat was taken. Students stood along the walls and sat in the aisles. Even some teachers had come to watch the presentations. Everyone wanted to see who would be brave enough or foolish enough to claim they had made progress on the Nexus paradox. Hyun sat with her team in the front row, her hands shaking slightly. Beside her, Jiho looked calm, but she could see his claws tapping nervously against his data tablet. Minji and Taeyang sat on his other side, both trying to look confident. Behind them, she could hear Throck and his Valkyrian friends laughing and making jokes. I wonder who will embarrass themselves first, Throck said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Maybe the tiny dragon will try, one of his friends replied. That would be very entertaining. Other students laughed. The sound made Hyun's stomach hurt. She hated that sound. It reminded her of all the times people had laughed at humans, calling them primitive and stupid. Professor Kelthar floated to the center of the stage. His tentacles waved for silence. Welcome to the semester presentations, he said. Today we will hear from teams who attempted the Nexus paradox. I remind you that this was meant to be a learning exercise. Failure is acceptable. In fact, failure is expected. What matters is that you tried. He paused, and Hyun thought she saw something like pity in his alien eyes. We will begin with the Valkyrian combat team, led by Throck. Throck and 5 other Valkyrians walked to the stage. They looked confident and powerful. Throck activated a holographic display that showed complex equations and battle simulation models. We approached the paradox as if it were an enemy to be defeated, Throck announced. We used computational brute force, testing millions of possible solutions per second. For 20 minutes, they presented their findings. The equations looked impressive, filling the air with numbers and symbols, but Hyun could see the problem. They had not actually solved anything. They had just tried to overwhelm the paradox with raw computing power. When they finished, Professor Kelthar examined their work carefully. "An interesting approach," he said diplomatically. "However, computational force alone cannot solve this paradox. The problem is not about speed but about understanding. Thank you for your effort." Throck's face turned dark with anger as he returned to his seat. He had expected praise, not polite dismissal. Next came a team of Thraxians. They had used probability theory and quantum mechanics. Their presentation was sophisticated and elegant, but it also failed. They had made some progress, understanding parts of the paradox better than anyone before, but they had not solved it. "Excellent work," Professor Kelthar told them. "Your research will be published and may help future attempts." "Well done." More teams presented. Morphians who used energy field manipulation, crystalline beings who approached it through harmonic resonance. Each presentation was impressive in its own way. Each team had clearly worked very hard, but none of them had succeeded. After 2 hours, most of the teams had presented. The audience was getting restless. Many people were starting to leave, convinced that nobody would actually solve the paradox. "Our final presentation," Professor Kelthar announced, "is from a mixed species team." He paused, and Hyun saw something like amusement in his expression. Led by Jiho of the Dragon Homeworld with human team members Hyun, Minji, and Taeyang. The auditorium erupted in laughter. It was not cruel laughter this time. It was the laughter of people who found something absurdly funny. A tiny dragon and 3 humans trying to solve what the greatest minds in the galaxy could not. "This should be good," Throck said loudly. "Entertainment for the end of the session?" Hyun felt her face burning with embarrassment. She wanted to run away to hide, but then she felt Jiho's claw gently touch her hand. "Remember," the small dragon whispered. "They laugh because they do not understand. Soon they will understand." The 4 of them walked to the stage together. Hyun's legs felt weak, but she forced herself to keep walking. They took their positions with Jiho at the center. The small dragon looked out at the audience. Thousands of eyes from hundreds of species stared back at him. Most of those eyes were filled with amusement or contempt. Jiho took a deep breath. Then he began to speak. "For 3,000 years, the Nexus paradox has been considered impossible to solve," he said. His voice was soft but clear. "Every civilization, every species has tried to solve it using their own mathematics, their own logic, their own way of thinking. And every single one has failed." He paused, letting the words sink in. "We think we know why they failed. They all made the same mistake." Professor Kelthar's tentacles stopped moving. "What mistake?" he asked. "They tried to solve the paradox alone," Jiho said. "Each species stayed within its own framework of thinking. Valkyrians used computational force. Thraxians used probability theory. Morphians used energy manipulation. All excellent approaches, all doomed to fail. And you did something different?" Professor Kelthar's voice was skeptical. "Yes," Jiho said simply. "We combined them. We used dragon mathematics, which is based on heat flow and energy patterns. We used human chaos theory and intuitive leaps. We used Valkyrian computational models and Thraxian probability frameworks. We even incorporated Morphian harmonic principles." The laughter in the auditorium had stopped. People were listening now. "You cannot just combine different mathematical systems," Professor Kelthar said. "They are fundamentally incompatible." "That is what everyone believes," Taeyang stepped forward. "But it is not true. Mathematics is mathematics. The universe follows the same rules everywhere for everyone. The only difference is how we perceive and describe those rules." Minji activated their holographic display. Equations filled the air, but these equations looked different from all the others. They had elements from multiple systems woven together in ways that seemed impossible but somehow worked. "We started by mapping the equivalencies," Minji explained. "We found that certain dragon principles corresponded to certain human principles, which corresponded to certain Valkyrian principles. Like different languages describing the same thing." Hyun continued the presentation. "Once we understood the connections, we could build bridges between the systems. We could use the strengths of each approach while avoiding the weaknesses." As they spoke, taking turns explaining different parts of their solution, the auditorium became completely silent. Even Throck had stopped making jokes. Everyone was focused on the equations floating in the air. Professor Kelthar floated closer to the stage. His tentacles were moving in rapid patterns now, which meant he was either very excited or very disturbed. He began examining their work carefully. his multifaceted eyes scanning every equation. Minutes passed. The silence grew heavy. Hyun felt like she could not breathe. Finally, Professor Kelthar spoke. "This is—" He paused as if struggling to find words. "This is revolutionary." The auditorium erupted in noise, but this time it was not laughter. It was shock and confusion and disbelief. "Are you saying they actually did it?" Someone called out. "I am saying," Professor Kelthar said slowly, "that they have made more progress than anyone in 3,000 years. The solution is not yet complete, but the framework is sound. If they continue this work—" He turned to look at Jiho. "If they continue this work, they will solve the Nexus paradox." For a moment, nobody moved. Then the auditorium exploded with sound. Some people were cheering. Others were arguing. Many were simply stunned. Other professors rushed to the stage to examine the work. Among them was Dr. Yuna, the human professor who had published the famous paper on quantum mechanics. She was one of only 5 humans teaching at the academy, and she was considered brilliant even by alien standards. Dr. Yuna studied their equations with intense focus. Her expression was unreadable. Finally, she looked at Jiho and the 3 humans. "This is extraordinary," she said quietly. "Not just the mathematics, but the collaboration itself. You have proven that different ways of thinking are not weaknesses to be overcome, but strengths to be combined." Another professor approached. This was Director Sung-hoon, the head of the Human Education Initiative. He was the one who had fought to get more human students into the academy. Hyun had heard that many aliens had opposed his efforts, saying humans were not ready for advanced galactic education. Director Sung-hoon's eyes were shining with tears. "You have done something incredible," he said. "Not just for yourselves, but for all humans. You have shown the galaxy what we are capable of." But not everyone was celebrating. Throck pushed through the crowd, his face twisted with anger. "This is a trick," he snarled. "They must have cheated somehow. A tiny dragon and 3 humans could not possibly what?" Dr. Yuna turned to face him. Her voice was cold. "Could not possibly be intelligent? Could not possibly work hard? Could not possibly see connections that you missed?" Throck's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "The problem," Director Sung-hoon said, "is not that they are small or young or from lesser species. The problem is that you are arrogant. You assumed that size and strength and age of civilization determine intelligence. You were wrong." More professors arrived, including members of the Intergalactic Science Council. They examined the work with growing excitement. Hyun heard words like paradigm shift and revolutionary and will change everything. Chief Counselor Velthara, the leader of the Science Council, finally spoke. She was a being of pure. The days following the presentation were strange and overwhelming. Jiho and his team became famous almost overnight. News of their achievements spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every major civilization knew about the small dragon and 3 humans who had solved the impossible problem. Messages flooded in from scientists, universities, and research institutes across hundreds of worlds. Everyone wanted to know more about their method. Everyone wanted to study their approach. Some even wanted to hire them immediately, offering incredible salaries and prestigious positions. But fame brought complications too. Hyun discovered this 3 days after the presentation when she tried to go to the cafeteria for lunch. A crowd of students surrounded her immediately, all talking at once. "Can you explain how you combine the different mathematical systems? Will you join our research team? Can I interview you for the Academy newsletter? Is it true that humans have a special way of thinking that nobody understood before?" Hyun felt overwhelmed. She liked being recognized, but this was too much. She managed to escape to the library where she found Minji and Taeyang hiding in their old corner. "It is crazy out there," Taeyang said. "I had to sneak through the maintenance corridors just to get here without being mobbed." "Where is Jiho?" Hyun asked. "Meeting with the Science Council," Minji said. "They want him to present the complete solution next month at the Galactic Science Summit. It is the biggest scientific gathering in the galaxy. Leaders from every major civilization will be there." "That is huge," Hyun said. She felt happy for Jiho, but also a little sad. Would their team break up now? Would Jiho become so famous and important that he would not have time for his human friends anymore? As if reading her thoughts, Minji said, "He asked if we would present with him." "At the summit, really?" Hyun felt her heart lift. "All of us?" "All of us," Taeyang confirmed. "He said this was never about one person. It was always about the team. He refuses to take credit alone. Before they could talk more, Dr. Yuna entered the library and walked straight to their corner. The human professor looked excited. "I have news," she said without preamble. "The Academy has approved the creation of a new research program. It is called the Collaborative Intelligence Initiative. The goal is to encourage students from different species to work together, combining their different ways of thinking." "That is wonderful," Yun said. "And they want you four to be the first official team," Dr. Yuna continued. "You would have your own research lab, your own budget, and complete freedom to study whatever interests you. They want you to be proof that this approach works." "What about our regular studies?" Taeyang asked. "You would continue your classes, but you would also have time dedicated to research. Think of it as a special program within the Academy." Dr. Yuna smiled. "Not everyone is happy about this, of course. Some professors think you just got lucky. They do not believe your method can work for other problems. But Director Sung-hoon and I fought hard for this program. We believe in you." The three humans looked at each other. This was an incredible opportunity. But it was also pressure. They would be representing not just themselves but the entire concept of collaborative thinking. "We should wait for Jiho," Minji said. "We should all decide together." Dr. Yuna nodded. "Of course. But think about it. This could change education across the galaxy. If you succeed, every academy will start teaching students to work across species boundaries. You could help create a new generation of scientists who are not limited by their own species' way of thinking." After the professor left, the three humans sat in silence for a while. "This is bigger than we thought," Taeyang said finally. "We just wanted to solve one problem. Now we are supposed to change how the entire galaxy thinks about education and cooperation." "Maybe that is how big changes always start," Hyun said. "Small steps that lead to big journeys." When Jiho finally returned from his meeting, he looked exhausted but happy. His bronze scales seemed to shine brighter than usual. "How did it go?" Minji asked. "Good. Strange. Overwhelming." Jiho sat down with a heavy thump. "The Science Council wants us to complete the final parts of the solution. They will give us whatever resources we need. They also want to study our methods and see if they can be applied to other impossible problems." "Dr. Yuna told us about the Collaborative Intelligence Initiative," Hyun said. "What do you think?" Jiho was quiet for a moment. "I think it is what we have been doing all along. We did not solve the paradox because we were special. We solved it because we worked together and respected each other's different ways of thinking. If we can teach others to do the same," he looked at his three friends, "we could help make the galaxy a better place." "So we do it?" Taeyang asked. "We do it," they all agreed together. The next few weeks were busy but exciting. They moved into a new research lab that was 3 times bigger than their library corner. It had holographic displays, quantum computers, and equipment from dozens of different civilizations. They also got a small office with comfortable chairs and a window that showed the stars. But the best part was that they could keep working together. They spent their time completing the full solution to the Nexus paradox. Every detail had to be perfect for the presentation at the Galactic Science Summit. They checked and rechecked every equation, every connection, every leap of logic. During this time, something unexpected happened. Other students started coming to them for help. Not alien students who had mocked them before, but students who genuinely wanted to learn about collaborative thinking. A Morphean engineering student named Vase asked if he could observe how they worked. He was struggling with a project and thought maybe their approach could help. Jiho immediately said yes. Soon Vase was bringing friends. Then those friends brought other friends. Within a month, they had regular visitors from a dozen different species all wanting to learn. Even more surprisingly, some of the students who had laughed at them before came to apologize. Not Thrak. He transferred to a different academy, unable to face his embarrassment. But several of his friends came looking ashamed. "We were wrong about you," one of them said to Jiho. "We thought strength was everything. We did not understand that intelligence can be stronger than muscles." Jiho accepted their apologies gracefully. He never seemed angry about the mockery he had endured. "You learned something important," he told them. "That is all that matters. Learning from mistakes is how we grow." As the date of the Galactic Science Summit approached, the 4 team members felt increasingly nervous. This would be different from presenting at the Academy. At the summit, they would face the greatest minds in the galaxy. Thousands of scientists, leaders, and philosophers would be watching. What if we make a mistake? Hyun worried. What if we forget something important? Then we will figure it out together, Jiho said calmly. That is our strength, remember? We work as a team. The summit was held on Nexus Station, a massive space station at the center of the galaxy. It took 3 days to travel there. During the journey, the team practiced their presentation over and over. When they arrived, Hyun was stunned by the scale of everything. The station was enormous, bigger than some planets. The grand hall where they would present could hold 50,000 people. Every seat was already reserved. Millions more would watch via holographic broadcast. I think I am going to be sick, Taeyang muttered. You will be fine, Minji said, though she looked nervous too. The summit lasted for 3 days, with hundreds of presentations on various topics. But everyone knew the main event was the presentation on the Nexus Paradox. It was scheduled for the final day, in the most prestigious time slot. The night before their presentation, Jiho could not sleep. He found Hyun sitting in the station's observation deck, staring out at the swirling colors of the galactic core. Nervous? Hyun asked as the small dragon sat beside her. Terrified, Jiho admitted. What if I fail? What if I make a mistake and everyone sees it? What if— Jiho, Hyun interrupted gently. Do you remember what you told me on the first day? When people were laughing at you? I said they laugh because they do not understand. And you said that knowledge is the greatest weapon. You were right. We have the knowledge. We did the work. Tomorrow we just need to show them what we discovered. Together. Jiho's eyes brightened a little. Together, he repeated. I am glad I have you as a friend, Hyun. All of you. I could not have done this alone. That is the whole point, Hyun smiled. None of us could have done it alone. That is what makes it special. The next day arrived too quickly. The team stood backstage waiting for their introduction. They could hear the massive crowd beyond the curtain. Thousands of voices talking, the sound like an ocean. I need to tell you something, Jiho said suddenly, before we go out there. When I first came to the academy, I was lonely. Everyone expected me to be a warrior, but I only wanted to learn. I thought maybe I was broken somehow. Wrong. But then I met you three and I realized something important. What? Minji asked. Being different is not being broken. It is being yourself. And when different people work together, respecting each other's differences, we can do impossible things. Jiho looked at each of them. Thank you for being my friends. Thank you.